Welcome everybody who's joined into this webinar today. We have the Managing Director of Tesoro Resources, Mr. Zeff Reeves here, who'll give us a bit of an overview of the operations at El Zorro and dive down a little bit further into some other aspects of the company. I will hand it over to Zeff to take it away. Thank you, Zeff.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today, and welcome everybody who's managed to join the call. This will be probably just a little bit more detail around a few aspects of some of the work that we've been doing, mostly to do with our drill out of the Ternera deposit. That slide that you can see in front of you now, that image is a view looking south of Ternera. A ridge of mineralisation outcropping along where my pointer is now. It's a little bit obscured from the logo, but basically everything dipping back to the east in here and getting repetitions of mineralisation controlled by some large north-south faults, which one is just popped up here where artisanal mining a few decades ago had eked out a living on a small quartz vein. So you know, Ternera is obviously a growing mineralised footprint. We're pretty pleased with the way things are going at the moment. We're obviously on the ground drilling 24 hours a day. We've currently got 4 drill rigs on site. We're probably going to look to increase that at some point in the not too distant future, and really pushing hard to target a resource by the middle of this year. So what I might do is I'll just skip straight into the geology and give you a quick overview of sort of where we've been heading and what we've been doing with the project. So this map here is a fairly schematic geology map of Ternera. The drill collars there are the dots. They're colour coded to gram metre intercepts. So anything pink is over 100 gram metre intercepts, which are, you know, pushing into world-class territory. And there's obviously a number of those throughout the deposit. But essentially mineralisation is controlled by a series of tonalite dikes. They're an intrusive type rock. They trend northeast across this page, and you can see them underlaid in the pink colours. And they've been hit by a structural system, a faulting system, which is predominantly hosted by north-south faults and linking north-west fault systems, which link all those north-south faults together. So essentially what happens is that those faults cross those tonalites, cause a lot of brittle deformation, which we see in the drill core as vein sets, breccias, sheeted veins. And that introduces the gold-bearing fluids and causes the gold mineralisation to form. So on that page, you know, you can see examples of the sort of drill results we're getting out of Ternera at the moment. We've now defined this for over 1 kilometre along strike, down to over 400 metres depth. We've drilled it and opened in all directions. So starting to be quite a significant gold system. And probably worthwhile pointing out, this is the first time that an intrusive related gold system has been defined in Chile that we know of. So it's given us quite a large commercial advantage to, I guess, what we're saying now is defining a gold district that was previously unknown. So highly unusual for Chile to even be given that opportunity. And based on what we're saying at the moment, this deposit's likely to be the largest gold discovery or new gold discovery in Chile for quite some time, and certainly the largest gold discovery in this region of Chile for quite some time. So it's all quite exciting for us. We're you know, very pleased with the way things are going, and it doesn't take long to rack up some serious ounces with drill intercepts such as shown on that page. So in terms of the areas that we've been really focused on, and we're quite excited about growing what we've already got on our plate, is through this northeast sector here. You can see a north-south fault, which is this dotted line here. There's another one just to the east of it. And we're seeing those tonalites dip down into these faults, and they've been quite well mineralised. Hole 69 was probably the first hole that we drilled into that zone. We've now peppered that along about 500 metres of strike. We're seeing very similar material come out of those holes. We're waiting assays on quite a few of them. There were some recent assay results that were announced. I think holes 83 and 84 were drilled into that zone. So it's starting to be very consistent, wide zones of mineralisation through there. And another area that we're starting to really like the look of is just down in this southern sector. We've picked up a new tonalite body that's interacting with this north-south fault and this north-south fault. We're seeing some quite attractive material come out of those holes as well. We haven't got any assays back on them, but they've got all the right ingredients there to suggest that they should be mineralised. So we're seeing the tonalite, it's heavily altered, it's been hit by the mineralising fluids. So really the plan is we'll continue to step out and try to define the edges of this system. Probably on record for saying it a number of times, we haven't found the edge of this yet, which is a good problem to have, but certainly racking up the amount of metres that are going to have to go into the ground to define it. And then while we have a couple of rigs doing that extensional type drilling, looking for the edges of the system, and look, we're optimistic that it's going to continue well into Tenera East. We see those tonalites appearing at surface at Tenera East, and we're doing some work to drill that now. But we're optimistic that the whole system continues into Tenera East. But while we're drilling those extensional holes, we'll be doing some infill also. So probably just some other work that's been ongoing, and I might just throw up a leapfrog view. If you can just bear with me for 2 seconds, I'll just pull that up on the screen, and it might give you a better perspective of, I guess, of the 3D modelling that's been going on, that's helping our resource, which will help our resource estimate that we're targeting for the middle of the year, and the geological models that sit behind our exploration model, and I guess, underpin why we've had such fantastic drilling success with pretty much every hole that we've drilled into this project having returned a positive gold result. So just bear with me for 1 minute. So hopefully everybody can see this. So this is the leapfrog model that's been developed. So at the moment, what you can see on the screen is the cloud of drill holes there. The red and the pink bodies are 2 large tonalite bodies that we've been targeting, and the north-south faults that have been modelled that go through those. So when we look at the mineralisation and where the best parts of it are, it's certainly well associated with these north-south faults. But for large zones around that, so sometimes we're up to 100, 150 metres wide in some instances, but typically that sort of 40 to 80 metres wide of really quite good grades. So you're looking at 2 plus, and some of our holes have obviously returned much higher grades than that. So you can see the distances that we've modelled the tonalite, and it's opened up a number of new areas, particularly down in this south area, down the bottom here, and also up through this northeast area where we've now picked up another fault. It's not in this model yet, but when you look at the distances here, you're looking overall, if I just pull it up, so you're looking at 1,200 odd metres of tonalite that we've drilled and modelled. And then down deep to the east, we're looking at over 600 metres wide of this tonalite body. And there's a number of these repeating. I've got the 2 main ones on the screen at the moment, but there's a number of smaller ones as well. They're also quite well mineralised. So that's given the team a really good impetus to, really target our drilling very effectively. And I think we've seen that in the cash burn of the company and where the money's been going. 85% of our spend goes into the ground here, just about 100% success rate on drilling. And it's really given us a high efficiency in, I guess, defining ounces at Tenera. And probably just as to get an idea of how it looks, This is basically looking north-south straight down those faults. You can see the dipping tonalites, and in those zones where they get hit by those north-south faults, we have northwest faults crossing through it as well. It's all pretty well mineralised. So it's starting to really come together from a geological perspective, and we're very pleased the way things are progressing and building that ounce inventory that everyone's hoping for a decent initial resource. I'll just switch back onto the presentation. So hopefully everyone can see this in a minute. Hopefully that's the presentation screen that you can see again now. Thanks for that. So I think that the other key point with this project that we're, major advantage for the company and sorry, just having a few little dropouts. Okay, so this is a location map of the project, and obviously fantastic access to the infrastructure. So, the analogy that I use for this is it's like having a major gold project or a major mining project, literally 50 kilometres outside of Geraldton, if you're comparing it to something in WA. So you've got a port 57 kilometres away. Our team stay in that port. We've got multiple power options. We've got options for water. We've got multiple water options from the ocean, and also desal plants that are close by. So really advantageous, and giving us the opportunity to not just define the project, but really optimise what the best way forward is for it. So I'll just flick onto the next slide. I think it's... Just bear with me.
Just a little bit slow to load there, Zeff, and get across the nullarbor. And the last one was flashing on my screen. I'm not sure if it was the same on the others, but okay. This one looks okay.
Yeah, okay, no problem. So, just going back to that scoping type work that is commenced, we're optimistic that we're going to get a decent sized resource out of this. I think I'm on record already to say that, our aspiration is to have a initial resource that we can, do a study on something that is able to knock out 100,000 ounces a year for a 10-year sort of mine life. Probably not there yet, but it's certainly getting there. And, I think by the middle of the year, we're going to be looking at something fairly healthy. But I suppose it's important to emphasise that we really do think that Maiden Resource is a starting point for this area. The district is looking like it's quite big. We're saying, if I just skip to one of the other slides with the other targets on it. This emerging gold district, people aren't looking for these deposits in Chile, but we are, and we know what the ingredients are to have this style of gold mineralisation now, and that's given us the impetus to obviously expand our ground position from what was initially a 1,500 hectare concession holding. Now we're over 500 square kilometres, covering a majority of what we think is the prospective belt. We've hardly looked outside of it. Where we have, it's been, it's shown that there's good, strong gold mineralisation. We've defined another 5 targets outside of Tenera. We've drilled one of them so far, that's Drone Hill, and first hole had a positive drill intercept, which has just been announced. So when you start having exploration success like that in a new district, I don't know if any of our West Australian peers can point to that sort of success where they've walked in and just drilled a single hole and been able to target, arguably mineable widths of mineralisation straight off the bat. So, we're very optimistic that there's going to be other areas outside of Tenera to drill and define as this project grows. We'll just skip through the geophysics slide and I'll just go straight to, I guess, where we're heading with some of the other work that we're doing. We're already starting a lot of that conceptual scoping work, orders of magnitude style work and so on. And that's being done off the back of what we see that's in the ground at Tenera and what we think the ultimate potential is for it. We do think there's going to be a mine here, and it's always Tesoro's intention to take this through to production. It's in a fantastic location to be able to leverage off all that infrastructure for a company such as Tesoro to take it through to production. The team that has put Tesoro together, we're all production guys and development guys. So, that's the types of things that we like to do. And we're currently just strengthening up our internal capabilities to assist with that, which includes the appointment of a study manager and so on. So we're already starting to pull together a lot of those inputs into those studies. And I guess one of the key points, or one of the major benefits that we've seen so far is our initial MET work, which had gold recovery up to 99%. But probably more importantly, the MET showed that there's free milling, and all of a sudden that opens up all these other possibilities and flexibility and how to optimize the project. So all of a sudden you have options for how you deal with your tailings, how you process the ore, and so on and so forth, to be able to generate cash off this sort of ore body fairly quickly. So we're already looking at all those options, and we really do have the pedal flat to the floor to get that resource defined by the middle of the year as a starting point, and then off the back of that, push into all these studies to get the project up and into development and feasibility. So coming up, we're obviously drilling 24/7 at the moment. There's going to be a whole bunch more drill results between now and the middle of the year. I am 100% sure that we'll just continue to drill through the year and use that first resource as a stepping stone, and continue to grow it, and then also off the back of that move into these studies. So busy year ahead. Company's very well funded, currently got about $18 million in the bank, so that's more than enough to do the work that we'd like to do, and it's going to be quite an exciting 12 to 18 months, I think, for the company as it continues to grow. So I guess that's where we're at the moment. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Zeff. There's some good info in there, especially to see the size of the strike and width of this deposit as it continues to grow. I've got some good questions coming through here. One's an ownership one. Does Tesoro Mining own 100% of the recently secured new concessions, or are they only 80% owned by the BV company? Good question, given recent announcements on the ownership structure.
Yeah, sure. So part of our original agreement, that was any ground that was pegged by that joint venture company essentially becomes part of the joint venture. So at this stage, Tesoro owns 85% of all of that entire ground holding, and the original vendor has currently 15% rights over that.
Okay. There's plenty here. With the current drilling program, I think its total is 50,000 metres. How much of that will be included in the maiden resource estimate?
Oh, look, the way we're drilling at the moment, I think we'll get, probably a little bit more than 50,000 metres in it by the end of by the middle of the year. So we'll try and squeeze as much as possible into that maiden resource. Obviously, we'd like to see that number as large as possible.
Okay.
And, I think it's going to be, that initial resource is going to show us lots of places where there's room to expand the deposit as well, I think.
And once again, you're looking somewhere around the middle of the year, June or July, for delivery of that. Would that be a target?
Yeah, that's, I think I'm on record for that at the moment. We've given the team that middle of the year deadline. So, as you could imagine, there's a lot of work going on in the background. So it's a fairly iterative process to actually build that resource. So we're doing all the work that needs to be done to be able to get that done by the middle of the year.
You said this is a unique kind of discovery and deposit there in the area, and possibly a whole new undiscovered gold region. Strike and widths are looking pretty good. What do you think about testing for deeper mineralisation than the current 400 odd metres?
Yeah, I think, at the moment we're probably pretty focused on what can be open pittable. We're certainly seeing grades and continuity, which lend itself to underground mining at some point in the future. But, ultimately we want to wrap a study around this, for a decent size open pit. So there's obviously some pretty heavy cost advantages there to go open pit mining, especially when you've got an ore body which is sticking out of the ground. So we sort of draw a rough base at 400 metres, but some of those deeper holes that we've let go, they're in obvious mineralisation by the time we hit 400. So the geos let them keep drilling, and I would suspect that mineralisation continues to go deeper. But we may drill a couple of speculating holes down there at some stage, but we're fairly rigorous and disciplined on our drill spend and what ends up in a pit.
Some location style and the current environment questions. How have you found, or are you finding the COVID situation in South America to impact on your logistics of analysis on the pretty extensive flow of results going through?
Yeah, look, obviously Chile's had a fairly challenging time with COVID. They've got one of the highest infection rates in South America, but that hasn't stopped us and hasn't materially affected us in any of the work that we've been doing. We've got some very good systems in place to be able to manage that, and so far it's been very well managed by our team on the ground. So there's been no hold-ups at all in terms of getting holes completed, getting technical staff to do the logging and so on, and getting samples and assays back from the lab. And probably, importantly, we work closely with a number of our suppliers, particularly our drilling contractor and the assay lab. And the assay lab, I think at the beginning of last year, didn't have the ability to do the type of assay that we wanted. We use a slightly different gold method. We use a larger sample size. And they weren't able to do that assay in Santiago, so it was getting shipped off to Lima and Vancouver. And off the back of our work and us now being the biggest gold-only customer for that lab in Chile, they've actually put that gold circuit in for us, and that's reduced some of our turnaround times as well. But they tend to sort of go through in large batches when we see results come through, as you can probably see as announcements come out, sort of releasing 6 or 7 holes at a time as they come to hand.
Zeff, you've explained to me that you can be working, the workforce can be out on site all day, and within about an hour or so be sipping a beer, a cerveza on the beachside location. Has COVID in that area interrupted, or is there any sort of local effect there that's having much of an impact otherwise?
Look, there is, in terms of travel restrictions and personnel required to have the appropriate permits to come in and out of town and those sorts of things. And the COVID situation in Chile is slightly unique in that a majority of the impact has been in Santiago, in the capital city. Regionally, the COVID impact, even though it's still there and there is a reasonable level of infection, has been nowhere near the impact that it has in Santiago in the high density sort of population areas. And probably the other thing to point out is that Chile is a long way ahead of, say, Australia as an example in terms of its vaccination. So I was just chatting to our general manager in country this morning, and he tells me that they're at around 5 or 6 million vaccinations already administered in Chile. So they've had a recent spike in their COVID cases in the city, and I think that's a psychological reason where people think the vaccine's there, so they drop their guard a little bit and they've had a bit of a spike. But you know, their vaccination program and the way the government's rolled that out has been very efficient, and you know, we'd hope that that'll have a positive impact on the general infection rate in the country. But look, certainly at Caldera, you know, our guys have to have a permit to get in and out of town, and outside of that, it's fairly well business as usual.
Just a couple more here, which are probably related. First of all, it's hard to know now without doing the feasibility, but what sort of mill grade throughput would you be expecting from what you've seen so far?
Oh, look, that's probably, you know, a difficult question to answer at this stage. Yep. There's certainly parts of this ore body which are low grade, and I think, you know, people can imagine it as those north-south structures as being nice high grade sweet spots, and you know, you can see those in the drill results. They're typically over 2.5 grams, and we see some nice widths up to 4 or 5 grams through there, and they hang together really quite well in 3D, but they just sit in a cloud of lower grade material, and really until we model that up properly and do a block model and a resource estimate, we won't know what the ultimate grade of that. But I think, you know, so far from what we can see in the drilling and what the results that we've released, you can start to get a feel for how that's going to look. You know, it's not going to be dissimilar to a normal drill result where we announce 100 metres at, you know, 1 gram to 1.5, and then it's got a nice high grade sweet spot in the middle of it.
There's been a couple of questions about what your target size for the resource is. I think you said, well, it's difficult to determine because it keeps getting bigger. You said that you'd be targeting some sort of 100,000 tonne per annum, 100,000 ounce per annum project is what your aspiration would be looking for? Yeah,
that's right. So, you know, we're saying obviously, you know, large zones of mineralisation there, which have got some big volumes in them and reasonable grades, and you know, so it's not inconceivable that that's where this is going to be potentially by the middle of the year. But as I said, we really think that this initial resource is a stepping stone. I don't think that'll be the final resource number that this project gets up on, and we can see, you know, at least drilling for another 12 months ahead of us. So based on some of the extensions that we've done, we're planning some more drilling now, and there's, you know, we could easily put another 20 or 30,000 metres into this on top of what we've already budgeted.
Terrific. Well, there's a couple of questions there which will probably be answered. We might get Zeff to answer on via email directly. I guess Zeff will finish off by looking ahead the next few months. You know, with the new target drone target, drone hill target has commenced, and the other targets. What are your thoughts on where you're going to go with those?
Yeah, obviously Drone Hill was a very interesting drill result. We actually missed the main tonalites that have been mapped on surface there, but we hit one of the north-south structures, and was quite well mineralised in the sediments there. So that really provides, you know, a high level of encouragement that there's going to be something over there. So there's a little bit more geology work to do there yet before we probably stick another couple of holes in it. But that's probably not in the too far distant future. But, you know, again, keeping in mind with, you know, ultimately limited resources, we focus where we get best bang for our buck. And at the moment, we really like the look of Tenera East. Geos are around there mapping and doing a sampling campaign at the moment. We're seeing the right rocks at surface. We've obviously got that sort of repetitive look in the geophysics with that nice anomaly that looks exactly like where we've been drilling at Tenera. And we now suspect that those tonalites repeat and continue across the Tenera East. So there's probably going to be a fair bit of effort put into that over the coming months in terms of expansion, as well as, you know, obviously defining that eastern flank of the deposit and these new tonalite body that we've just found, or or expanded in the southern central part of Ternera, which they had never had any drilling previously, but there's some pretty decent material coming out of some of those holes at the moment.
Okay, good. Well, thanks very much to Zeff and to everybody that joined us today. This will be recorded and we'll endeavour to get it up on the Tesoro Resources website once it's been rendered and edited, etc. So keep your eye out for that. I'd like to thank you all for joining here today and Zeff for joining us as well. And we look forward to hearing another update soon as El Tesoro keeps continuing. Thank you very much for coming along.
Great. Thanks, Peter. And thank you, everyone, for joining.